do anything to accelerate indoor positioning? Like, for example, when they set up the satellites in the sky for GPS, do you think, like, should the federal government mandate something like a national database of access points?
I think they could. I don't think that's probably the most optimal route.
Okay.
I think trying to get agreement on that and getting the government to put some wood behind that would probably take more time than I think as the industry can collaborate together to do that. So it wouldn't be the path I would prefer. I just don't think that's the same. It took GPS a long time to get to that point. I think the industry can move a lot faster.
Yeah, but I think it's a provocative idea. So,
because
I think we might see the government moving more on the FCC on the one side. That might be something that might implicitly drive something like that. So, yeah, I think our companies probably have enough energy to do it. But if it doesn't happen, I guess maybe we'll have to ask the government to come in and make us work together.
Okay. Any questions?
There's something the government could do that could take away prohibitions that actually limit advanced indoors. So in Japan, the IMES system, indoor measurement system, is legal. It transmits on the signal very close, basically on the GPS signal, very slight offset from the GPS signal, but in band and GPS at a very low power. And that's illegal in the US. And there's issues. We don't encourage people to be jamming GPS, but at the moment you could not have IMES in the US. So it's a possibility that with certain power restrictions you would legalize that, and then that would encourage that system.
My guess is the government's going to have their hands full with all the privacy issues. It seems to be consuming most of their attention is just how to think about rules and regulations around individual privacy seems to consume all their thinking right now.
Okay. So
I want to encourage you to not wait for the government.
With one vote.
Other questions?
What can be done to facilitate because I think, like, for indoor, all of us accept that it's fragmented. It's not like one Google map. It's like many companies having different things, different maps, for example, different videos. What can be done to facilitate to these companies to get closer to one another? I mean, one is like going to the standard or any other.
I think standards are a part of it. Find the areas where we all agree it's a challenge that doesn't prohibit us from competing on our strengths. I think there's a bunch of those areas, and I think you'll find a lot of them through the discussion today. I think that accelerates, and some of it's just market adoption takes time and education, but I think we're at a point where collaborating as an industry can really really accelerate the progress. So I think it's a really good time to do it.
Yeah, I think also if you think about the existing AGPS or GPS ecosystem, it did take a long time. And it took, from the E911 mandate, around 2000 or something, it took 8, 9, 10 years to really have the ubiquitous location technology on smartphones that we have today. So I think we just need to agree that, just maybe recognize it is going to take time. I think there's certainly things we can do to push it forward, but this is going to take time.
Yeah, well, I would agree with both Ted and Cormac there. I think the standards are very important, and when you were talking about standards, the thing that immediately came to mind for me was flashback 12 years ago. I was here at this very same venue. We were just beginning to talk about AGPS standards back then. And there was quite a lot of proprietary approaches to AGPS back then that have all been standardized by now. So some examples are different. So a company I was at pioneered long-term orbit calculations. So you don't have to wait for the satellite to tell you where it is. You figure out it in advance and make that information available. That was proprietary for a long time. Now that's completely standardized. It's in the standards. Takes years, but it's, now is the past, right? It was just 12 years ago I was here. It's going to be, there's 10 years from now we'll go, wow, there we were, 2012. It seemed like just the other day. So I think it's really great that you're pioneering this pushing the standards bodies for that. I think that's what's going to do it.
It seems that if location is known, applications are going to emerge. Do you envision any killer application that can drive the whole location destination with one point?
Well, a couple of thoughts on that is, one, the killer app in my mind for location has always been navigation. That's just a very intuitive concept for everyone. I got to get from A to B, and that, I think that's been a huge part of the adoption of GPS and pushing it onto personal devices. But the reality is it's less about one app than it is just the sheer plethora of them. I mean, when the iPhone up the App Store, people were talking about what are the 3 or 4 apps that people can get involved in, and it really wasn't 3 or 4 apps, it was 30,000. And it was just the openness of everyone being able to try out new ideas on it is what really accelerated it past navigation. It just, a lot of these ideas you see today, like Foursquare and others, you just couldn't have envisioned before the infrastructure was in place that a 2-person app development company could come up with the idea. So I think getting this kind of technology on as many devices in these open development environments is all that's needed. And then there's just so much brain power and energy going into use cases and apps as you see every day that it'll kind of take a life of its own.
Yeah, I think certainly navigation, both outdoor and indoor, is very important. I think also, I think I mentioned this thing about context awareness. So both outdoor and indoor, what am I close to, what's around me, whether it's in a museum, different paintings, or a store, products in the aisles that I had previously expressed a preference for. So this whole concept of context awareness, with the location radius, if you will, of a few meters, that I think will spawn a whole bunch of apps which will just use that information as context, and they use it implicitly. I think certainly we do not want to in any way, how do I say, second guess the innovative and the innovativeness of app developers. I think there's just millions of app developers out there who do very, very interesting things and novel things that we have no idea about. I think this is really a situation, if we can, as an industry, deliver this technology platform, the app developers will come.
Yeah, I think just to continue with that thought, that the whole notion of killer apps is a little bit last decade, and the navigation will remain a big one, but checking in on social networks has become a big deal, not for most of us in this room, because we're disqualified by age. But I noticed people just want to check in and see where their friends are and all that. It's a very basic human thing. But so those will be big ones, but I think Cormac's right. If you focus too much on that, you're going to miss a whole lot of things. And I just wanted to give you a little demo. You can do this yourself. Something like this is an iPhone, but something like an iPhone. You go to you go to settings. You go to location services. Just click on that, and then you can choose which ones are allowed to use your location services or not. But I'm scrolling. Okay, now I got to the end. Right? It's just you wouldn't believe how many things are using your location, stuff you wouldn't think about. So camera, for example, that was that currency conversion, right? That uses my location. So by default, it puts the currency of the country I'm in at the top of it, and so on. Now I won't go through them all, but there's just so many things using location now today. Never mind the future where it's going to be a lot more.
You mentioned context-aware services, which kind of say where you are, the accuracy of finding you is quite important. But of course, there is check-in, which is like you can be in a hotel and you can say check-in. Is there a tipping point where you see at a certain accuracy, 3 meters, 5 meters, 10 meters, whatever, that suddenly you see a huge set of new applications that will be more realistic?
Yeah, definitely for the indoor navigation, that's still something that's just at the beginning, right? So that video I showed you, it's just about working. You could actually find your way around the IKEA store using Wi-Fi navigation. And the IKEA store has been well mapped. So some other store, it wouldn't work. It's just beginning, and the accuracy that you kind of saw in the video, if it can tell you within, I guess, 5 meters, and that's about the limit. Beyond that, you're going to be in the adjacent area of the maze, and you won't find your way out. So something like like how Cormac said, single-digit meters, but low single-digit meters. It doesn't have to be 1 meter accurate, but it's got to be better than 10 indoors to get true navigation. Well, the president of our company likes to call it the find the bananas thing. You find the bananas in the supermarket, without having to debase yourself by asking someone for directions. Then, so good enough to navigate to one particular area of a store. It's not there yet, but we're just getting there now, and that is going to enable a whole lot of in-store navigation.
Yeah, I mean the thing is, I guess beyond that, there's also the very short-range technologies which could get potentially down to tens of centimeters. Whereas probably the next frontier, and I think there are developers and use cases for those too. So I don't think we're even with sub 10 meter. It would be great. It's going to take us a while to get there globally, but there's still being able to find the product on the store precisely, and maybe with some relationship to mobile payment as well, with some I guess proximity. So there's still a lot of things that you could do with tens of centimeters as well.
The way we think about it is every time you shave off a meter or two, you open up a whole new set of possibilities. I don't know if there's a certain threshold you have to hit where all of a sudden we're in the promised land. I think it'll never stop until you can get down to things like centimeters across the world. And so I think there's a lot of future employment for those of us in education, because I think it's very hard to do, and to do that consistently across the board, every time you get it a little better, it's amazing the ideas that come out of it.
Okay, thank you.